Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Here Be Dragons. I am your host, Stephen Stark. Joining me this week, we got Nessie back as usual. Standard fare. Got some Nessie action. We're very happy to have you back. I know you're on vacation the last couple of weeks. I hear y'all had a pretty good time. Dan, I hear you were there as well. Speaking of, everybody, welcome Dan back to the channel. Most of y'all probably know him, but yeah. For those that don't, Dan, why don't you tell everyone who you are and what you do, and why you're important to me as a person?
You'll have to tell me, but I'm Dan. I have a YouTube channel, Voice of Geekdom, where I talk about Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's Legendarium, and I'm also a massive Star Trek fan, and so that's what we're here to talk about today. And yeah, I've recently been on holiday as well. I met up with Nessie and a bunch of the people, all of our mutual friends down in Virginia, and we had a whale of a time in our little plague house.
Plague house. It was fun though. We overcome and persevered.
We did, yeah. We had a good time.
We're a bunch of nerds in a house together. We'll entertain ourselves and be perfectly content.
So yeah, I'm really glad to have you back, Dan. Even last week we were like, we're not even really sure what we're doing next week, and then Dan was like, Star Trek, and we were like, Star Trek.
Yeah. This show has been so good.
It has. This is my favorite Star Trek show maybe that I've ever seen. That might be recency bias. I think like season 2 of Discovery was pretty incredible. But like this is just a continuation of that, really.
Yeah, that was kind of like the pilot, right?
Yep, back
kind of, yeah. There was a big outcry of support for Anson Mount as Captain Pike in season 2, and a lot of people were calling for this show, and Paramount CBS obliged, and I'm so happy that they did, because it's just excellent track. I'm not ready to say that it's my favorite by any means, because I love my 90s
not
Trek,
done yet.
And 60s Trek was revolutionary and stands alone for what it is too.
Right.
But this was the best first season of a Trek show, I think. It's got a lot of work to do to catch up with some of my favorites from the 90s, but it's very, very good, and some really strong acting performances as well. I love Anson Mount so much. I want to see him in more things, and he is a great actor. He is a fantastic actor. So much range from him in this whole season.
Yep, I fell in love with him, literally, figuratively, however you want to call it, because the man is a snack. But in his work in Hell on Wheels, his iconic role as Mr. Bohannon, he's got some acting chops, and I was so excited that he was going to be playing this character.
It's a little bit of a softer take on the character than what we saw in the 60s. For those who don't know, this is a legacy character from the original Star Trek show, and this was the captain of the Enterprise in the pilot of the 60s show.
First pilot.
Right.
The original pilot.
The unaired pilot, essentially, which was later used in a kind of clip show, which was used and referred back to in flashback. So he was a canon character in the original run. But we see him kind of not at his best when we catch up with him in that later episode in the original run. We should probably explain kind of the premise of the show, I think.
You know what, Dan? You are the resident expert on this topic, and you know more Trek than I do. Let's just be honest. I really enjoy the show. I've seen a lot of Trek. I have not seen all of it. I've seen all the movies. I have not seen all the shows. I have not revisited many of the shows. Nessie, unless you object, I think, Dan, why don't you explain it to us?
Well,
So
Dan and great conversation. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
We talked about this in Virginia, didn't we? And I know you know the story too. So in the two-parter in the original series, in the first season of the original series, there was a two-part episode called The Menagerie, which was, as I say, it took footage from the unaired pilot, which featured Captain Pike, who was the captain of the USS Enterprise before Captain Kirk. And so he was in charge of the Enterprise actually for a long period, about 11 years. And he, at some point in the past, he visited this planet, which was Talos 4. And the Talosians, they have kind of unique mental powers, which allows them to create these illusions. And so in that kind of revisited version of that original pilot, what they did is they had him maimed and immobile and paralyzed in a mechanical chair. And so he wasn't able to interact with people strongly. He could just like literally light up a buzzer for yes and no, basically. And Spock commandeers the Enterprise in that episode and takes him back to Talos in order to live out his life as an agent in this kind of fantasy world that the Talosian aliens construct for him to live, along with a love interest for him who was a survivor of another shipwreck, which was part of that unaired pilot. And then in Discovery, we meet Captain Pike again. And Discovery's season 2 takes place in between these two events. And so we meet Pike while he's in command of the Enterprise. And something happens where he learns of his future fate. And so we see it again in the finale, which we'll get to. There's a Klingon time crystal, which is kind of a piece of space magic, which allows him to see his future play out. And so he actually not only sees it, but lives it. He lives his kind of, not his death, but the end of his life as he knows it in an accident, where he saves the lives of several junior crew members aboard the ship. And so he has foreknowledge of the fact that he's later going to be bound to a chair.
Not just bound to a chair, but like horribly burned and incommunicado. It's
a horrible, horrible fate that he knows is there ahead of him. And the Klingon monks on the Klingon planet in Discovery tell him that that's his future and that it's nailed on and that he can't escape it. And so this first season really explores that question of whether or not he can escape it and how he can deal with that foreknowledge. And so that's something that is present in this first season and important to Pike's character, but it doesn't necessarily stop you from enjoying it if you haven't seen Discovery.
Right.
Which was with the right approach for this show. And so there's that kind of context there with him, but with that said, that like if right now at this point in time, if I'm going to recommend some Trek to somebody who's never watched Star Trek, this is the show I'm going to recommend them because they've done such a good job of using that continuity without having it interfere with the story that they're telling here.
One of the things that has really struck me about, since we're still having sort of a top-down view, is the overall structure of the show itself. I'm really impressed with the way the characters have arcs, but there's not a big overarching narrative to the season. It is Planet of the Week, but you still watch them in order because of what the characters are going through. And overall the cast is great. There's a few familiar names, but there's some brand new names as well. Some of them are surprising. La'an was one of the big surprising reveals to me. We are full spoilers, I guess, too. Just we're talking about a whole season. We need to be able to get through it. But yeah,
I love how they've taken the episodic nature of the original series and just touched it with love. And to bring forth these character driven arcs, these little mini arcs, these character concepts, and really they're able to like kind of combine the best of what we've seen so far, in Star Trek, and just
Mhm.
kind of make a happy little space baby out of it.
Yeah,
And
because it's episodic and serialized.
yes, the best of both worlds, and all the strange new ones.
Yeah, like most of the characters have some kind of arc. Some have less of them than others. Pike gets a lot. Number one, Una.
Oh yeah,
And Riley gets a lot. Dr. Mbanga has a surprisingly heartwarming and heart-rending story.
yeah.
Nurse Chapel gets a little bit to do.
I love her.
Yeah,
Yeah, me
and
too.
I'm just like,
I love her.
Yeah, can we just dwell on that just for a second, actually, because this is another legacy character. She's also from the '60s Trek.
There's so many.
She was played by Majel Barrett, who was Gene Roddenberry's girlfriend at the time, later wife, and so in the original run. But the character that we saw in the '60s was kind of how can I put this? Sort of not the most progressive take on the nursing profession that I've ever seen, and it was very much of its time in that way. And they've kind of modernized the way that we view Nurse Chapel. To Roddenberry's credit, he did later promote her to full doctor, actually, in the original run. But Nurse Chapel, right from the get-go, she's inventing a new genetic technique to disguise them to touch down on an infiltrate an alien planet. And yeah, she's definitely smart and capable, and I really, really like her dynamic with Spock as well, because that was something that was kind of in the original '60s show. They kind of had her have this crush on Spock, and it was used as a tool to kind of show Spock's emotionlessness. Whereas in this, there's so much more to actually.
The layers of that relationship.
This is so the good. Best friendship. Oh my God, this relationship that they have is just so charming.
But it's a sad, unrequited love as well. It is there as well, and
I think Spock even is a little bit of the mind of like, I could go there if I was a different person. I could go there, but he's not a different person, and they both know that. I think the attraction is there, but he is dedicated to Brain.
Sure.
And
and to Brain.
Yeah, what a great
character.
Yeah, that's another legacy character. Today I've been watching loads of old TOS Trek, and so I've watched.
I think it's 90%.
Did you watch Amok Time?
I watched Amok Time. Yeah.
Did you watch Balance of Terror?
I've just watched Balance of Terror just now.
I did not, but I know those episodes.
Yeah. So I've watched Amok Time introduces the character of T'Pring, and it's a surprise because nobody knows that Spock has a wife. And it's the episode that actually kind of does quite a bit of world building for the Vulcans, and we go to Vulcan for the first time in that episode. It establishes the tradition of Ponfar, which is this kind of 7-year cycle that adult Vulcans have for their reproductive cycle. And so it takes over Spock's mind, and he goes insane.
Once every 7 years, the Vulcans become fertile and crazy.
Right. All that pent up horniness just comes out in every 7 years.
Yeah, the hormones reign supreme.
Right. So they kind of riff off of that and just build out this T'Pring character so much more in this show. We see quite a lot of her, and we get a topless Spock in the first episode as well, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, and it actually shows their, his and T'Pring's deep relationship. We only just got a glimpse and a hint of it, both, on the original series, and they have they have a bond and a mutualistic relationship. They've got, they have relationship troubles, which is one of the best episodes, I think, in this. where
Yeah.
they basically do the, we have to see how the other, walk a mile in the other man's shoes for the day, and
Yeah,
there's
that
a lot
was
of
so
sand.
funny.
I love when she calls him up at the start of that episode, and she's like, "Spock, I've been reading up on human sexuality," and he's so uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
It's really cute.
I mean, they're a real couple.
I will say,
no problems.
I grew up as you're very young. I've been as aware of. I don't remember a time I wasn't aware of Star Trek, and like the broad themes. But as a very young kid, I always just thought Vulcans had no emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so great that because maybe they were even meant not to in the original vision of the
In
character.
the original.
But this sort of like society whose culture it is to repress those emotions is so much more interesting than just not being able to feel them at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives us the opportunity to have episodes like the one where the Freaky Friday episode, I guess, is the best way
the
to
Freaky
put it.
Friday episode.
As they're both, as you say, walking a mile in each other's shoes, but they're in a deeply committed relationship, but they each have these things pulling them away from that. And that's very relatable to most of us. Most of us have been in a situation where we were in a committed relationship, but we had something pulling one way or the other. And our partner at the time, our partner's probably the same. But to watch these two people who have spent their whole lives repressing emotions being inside their partner, like in a way that none of us will ever experience, it was just fascinating and fun in a way that some Trek never really achieves. Don't you think? Like Star Trek is meant to be, it should make you laugh sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they're using the two Vulcans to do this, it's just, chef's kiss on this. That give a Vulcan a comedic role, like low key comedy, and it's not even. It's priceless. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Great job on the writing on these. Oh
I
my God.
I really like the scene where they reveal to Pike what's happened, right after it's happened. He comes in, and
Yeah, you probably respect it because we're both acting so different.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly how Pike reacts, but he's like, right, sure.
Yeah,
okay, this happens. well, I need Spock. So
Yeah, you're not wrong, Kate. It is very, very fun and funny.
Yeah, it's very.
I want to go back to Nurse Chapel for a second.
Okay.
We're just going to meander through this whole conversation, probably. You know how we do here.
She gives great relationship advice.
I really am glad that they gave her as much to do as they did. Again, the original concept of that character was more or less to be a sex object. A lot of times it's to contrast with the nearly asexuality that is Spock in early TOS. But that's how she was originally conceived. And let's face it, she's a very pretty lady that is playing Chapel now, an Australian actress whose name I cannot think of off the top of my head, but I'm sure one of y'all will get it. But like her, she was great, and she brought such a pathos to the character, and like she's very free, very herself, beholden to no one outside her, her commitment to Starfleet and her shipmates, but like she was her own woman, sexually liberated, but that unrequited, thank you, Kate, Jess Bush, but that unrequited love story is just, it's heartbreaking because you can see she does genuinely admire Spock deeply. And she would prefer maybe to have that type of relationship, but none of the other men in her life who she enjoys their presence, but doesn't always, isn't interested in the long-term relationship with any of them. I think she would be with Spock, but we all know that they're not going to mess with canon in that way, and it's never really going to happen.
Probably not, no. There might be ways that they could potentially explore that through some kind of sci-fi sort of hijinks that.
For an episode or two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's never. They're never going to kind of get married and settle down, are they? Probably, because we know where these characters are going to end up. But I also want to, if we're going to talk characters, I also want to talk about Uhura as well, because
God, yes,
I thought she was fantastic as well. We haven't mentioned her yet.
Off at the end of the season, she didn't have as much to do, but again, what she had to do was great.
Yeah, it was a good take on the character. It established her backstory, which we never knew anything about particularly, really. We knew about her love of languages. It capitalized on some of the kind of continuity of the character as well by having her have the episode where she figures out the alien comet and she sings, and she was a singer in the show, in the 60s show as well. So I liked what they did there with that.
Yeah.
And I liked her as a cadet and kind of going from department to department and doing a tour in engineering and having that relationship that she had with Emma, which was awesome.
Oh my God, yes.
And just kind of move from place to place and explore different relationships with different characters in the ship. I have a soft spot for this character. I don't have too much more to say about that, but
she's the only one who doesn't really know if she really wants to be there. Everybody else is dedicated, committed, or what have you, but she's the one who's just like questioning and exploring her own mind, her own self, her own sense of self. So it would be interesting we know she stays there. We know this, but how she arrives at these decisions. And I think Hemmer is a big part of, obviously he's been a big part of that this entire season.
Hemmer.
Yeah, I cried.
I did too.
I cried many times, on many episodes in this series. I have cried.
Yeah, I heard some of y'all say you haven't seen all of it or any of it.
We might be slightly spoiling things for some people.
Yeah, we might be slightly spoiling things. It is what it is. We have to talk about the whole thing. But Hemmer was a huge part of Uhura's journey.
I think we lost him a bit too early. I think he's going to be a Tasha Yar because we lost him too early, and there's stories that haven't been told with him, and I hope we get a chance to revisit the character in some kind of sci-fi way. That's why I say he's the Tasha Yar, because we lost her in season 1 of TNG, and then she came back in various ways over the years through time travel stuff.
His own daughter.
Maybe.
It was nice to get a good introduction to the Andorian characters through him.
He's not Andorian. He's one of those weird Andorians.
Yeah, he's like an Andorian albino offshoot kind of character.
Yeah.
In Enterprise, they did in the 4th season of Star Trek Enterprise, they did a story arc with the Romulans, where the Romulans had this plot where they were using
the Andorian ambassadors or something.
Well, they were using these drone ships to attack, which had like holographic projectors attached to them, in order to attack different allies of the humans, or kind of the Andorians and the Vulcans and the Tellarites, and basically the founding members of the Federation. And so this was it was a plot that ended up actually establishing the start of the Federation in Enterprise, where what they did, and I'm spoiling Enterprise for people that haven't seen it, but they kidnapped an Einar, however you pronounce it, which is what Hemmer is. Hemmer is one of those people. So they're like a genetic offshoot of the Andorians.
Right.
They have telepathic powers, but are blind, and they are pacifists. as they established in this show. So it was cool to see another one of that race, because I really liked that story arc in season 4 of Enterprise. Enterprise kind of hit its stride at that point, and then it was cancelled. So it was nice to see an Einar, or however you pronounce that word.
That's how I say it. That's Einar.
That's how I put it. Yeah.
Anyway, yes, very good and interesting character. A lot of fun. I love that sort of the gruff engineer. It's an archetype we've had for a long time in Star Trek, and it works. And he's an interesting version of that. He's different. He's still a gruff engineer, but he's different from Scotty or Chief O'Brien or anyone like that, you know?
His demise might make room for Scotty to take over. Now, it seems to be that
we got a voice. We got a voice.
We got a voice. We got a voice
from that one episode. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, I think we're gonna get the gang's gonna get. I mean, the gang is kind of sort of together-ish. You know.
I was getting there.
We'll get a new crop of ensigns in here soon.
As much as I love Chekhov and Sulu, I'm not ready to give up La'an and Erica, you know.
Oh my God.
I can't remember Erica's last name. I just it's Erica to me.
Ortegas. Man, Ortegas.
Ortegas, yes.
Oh my God. I love all these characters. I love them all.
Was so fun because, like, I don't know, just her delivery of that character. She's so snarky and like pulling pranks on the newbies, but genuinely great at what she does and not mean-spirited, you know, like getting Uhura to show up in her dress uniform to a casual dinner. That's funny. It doesn't hurt anybody.
No. It's done out of love.
Well, and it made her laugh. You know, hey, it made me laugh too. I like in that episode also that we see maybe the first thing we see Captain Pike doing is cooking.
Yeah.
And he's cooking in the scene where, you know, they're having the cadets dinner and he offers to cook dinner for the pirates that are, you know, trying to take over Enterprise. And he actually does a lot of cooking. Cooking, like, you know, food might be his love language for all I know. But I really thought that was a fun character trait that they didn't lose sight of throughout the season. You know, you can have an episode where I love to cook and he cooks, and that's all you ever see him cook. But Captain Pike cooked several meals this season. Several.
Always a good thing for a Starfleet captain to be doing as well. I'd love to see a cook-off between him and Captain Siska from DS9.
Hey, maybe we can get that.
Yeah, you're right. Gotta love a good hazing ritual. You know, nobody got hurt. That's why it's okay.
But that was cool that they established that character trait about him, that he likes to cook, and then used that in a plot later on.
Multiple times.
Where he, well, the plot that you referenced, where he creates a mutiny by just insulting the guy's food, and then kind of making a few allies amongst his crew there, and just manipulating them into this situation where he created this mutiny. It all started from cooking them a nice slap-up meal. He achieves a lot with charm, does Captain Pike.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that separates him from all the other captains we've seen is, look, the captain of a starship does not need to be likable. They need to be wise, intelligent, capable, and probably gentle to a certain extent because they've got a whole crew of people, but they don't have to be likable. But, like, Pike wants to be bros with everyone. He really does. Like, in a way that Star Trek fans like to say the Federation is not a military organization. okay, I guess you can technically say it's not, but it is a very militarized organization.
I think it was more militarized in the 23rd century as opposed to the 24th. So at this point in the timeline, I would say that they are closer to an orthodox military organization, whereas the TNG crew have like whole families there, and it's like a cruise liner that they all live on. Whereas this is more in keeping with like the 60s Trek, where it's like a submarine that you're all living on.
Right. Yes. Which the finale kind of dips its toe into that a good bit as well.
Although Pike has a hell of a living quarters compared with the way that it was depicted in 60s Trek.
No kidding. That's one thing that most TV shows get wrong, is that it's not that big inside a spaceship. Space is at a premium on a ship or a spaceship.
Yeah.
But Pike has a familiarity, like a relationship type familiarity with the people on his crew that probably crosses the line from what most modern military commanders would find acceptable. He is friends with them, and if you are the captain of a Navy ship, your bridge crew aren't your friends. They're your co-workers. They are your subordinates. Your friends might be your executive officer, your chief petty officer, those type of people, that your second and third and fourth in command. But, the driver, like Erica, no, do your job. That's not something that most military commanders would not cross that line. But I can't say that I hate it, because this is Star Trek. This is the imagining of a better future, and if Pike is not a military commander, and he's not, he's in charge of an exploration vessel.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I always find it interesting because you're right, Dan. Militarism has risen and fallen in the Federation over different time periods, and this is probably the time period when it is maybe the least militarized.
Perhaps, yeah. I would say TNG is the least militarized.
Okay.
Because there's been peace.
You're right.
For a very long time at that point in time, and then it comes back with a vengeance in DS9
because they get the Dominion War and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's like endless war at the end of that show. So,
great, yeah.
So that was explored in that, but yeah, it's certainly. It's different than Discovery was, because season 1 Discovery, we had the Klingon War, and this is kind of a period of rebuilding, which they do reference that as well.
Yeah.
In this, and Starfleet is getting back to its exploration and its main job, as you like, and diplomacy as well. We see Pike uses his diplomatic nous here and there as well. Excellent captain, very different from a lot of the other captains that we've seen, and they explore that difference in the finale, of course, with the contrast with Kirk really nicely.
Pike he's a different kind of captain. Most captains know, like, have read files or whatnot, but like, he wants to know what makes his people tick. He's got that more almost
he's
fun uncle. I don't know,
like
maybe
paternal. Paternal was the word I would use.
Yeah. He's not their dad, but if they've got some life problems they could talk about, or he knows what's making them. He wants to know why they're here.
Yeah, I love, because when they juxtapose that in the sort of Dr. Mbenga's fantasy world story, and he was the backstabbing, conniving coward. And just him play that character, that almost cartoon villainy, like worm, worm tongues type character, and it was so much fun. But it really put into sharp contrast the real Captain Pike, the one who he struggles. He's human like the rest of us, but he's so genuinely wants to do good and believes that
I mean,
mercy and understanding are the paths forward to that. Like, how do you not love that as a character?
yeah, he finds out his nickname among everyone, the Boy Scout. He's Boy Scout. I don't know if he really likes that or not. You know?
I wonder where his arc is going as well, because as I said, we explored the difference between him and Kirk in the season finale, and it was his kind of instinct for diplomacy and his willingness to explore the concept of peace that actually cost the Enterprise. So just to explain, the finale was revisiting Balance of Terror, which you mentioned already, Stephen, from the original, from the first season, where this was the first appearance of the Romulans in the original series.
Much better job on the on how the Romulans, the appearance of the Romulans in
yeah. Well, the Romulan commander in that old episode was played by Mark Leonard, who also plays more famously Spock's father. A lot of people were saying they wanted the same actor from Discovery who played Spock's father to play that Romulan commander, which makes no sense. But it made no sense in the 60s. But then actors coming back and playing different roles in Star Trek is nothing new. Played, another Klingon character in the movies, and then came back and played Worf. So you can do it. But yeah, they explored that because in Balance of Terror in TOS, Kirk has the same strategy of shadowing the Romulan ship, which was repeated here, and it was Kirk's idea here. But then Kirk is in charge of course in the original show, and he goes after the Romulans and tracks them down and ends up blowing them up, or disabling them. And then there's the same speech that we got at the end of this, kind of mirrored to Kirk in the original and to Pike in this. But it was Pike's instinct for diplomacy that actually kind of costs the Enterprise and costs Spock his...
That's the real kicker, is that it costs Spock his life.
Yeah.
Not any of... I don't think any of the other stuff really matters because yes, Enterprise gets beats up. Yes, people die on the ferry. But
it was Spock.
I don't think it changes the future that much, except Spock's not there.
Well, it starts a big war as well.
Changes a lot of the future.
Right. Like, Spock is important. Like, First Officer, Lieutenant Commander Spock or whatever is important. But Ambassador Spock, he's one of those legendary, like his fingerprints are all over the future.
Well, Ambassador Spock, of course, later establishes a lasting peace with the Romulans in the episode. That story arc starts in TNG and then kind of goes full circle in the 2009 Star Trek movie. So,
well, they said Pike Senior told Pike Prime or whatever, all possible futures. There's the only Spock has to live. He has to. So,
he has
otherwise
things to do. He says, doesn't he?
He has things to do. Yeah, galaxy saving things to do. I think
people who have things to do. Just that keeps popping into my head. This season of Star Trek, which is one of my favorite Star Treks I've ever watched, references the worst Star Trek movie ever made.
Your mileage will vary on that one. But
I didn't mind it.
No. Well, it took. So it was episode 7, wasn't it? I think, where they had the plot line with the pirates and everything. And it turns out that the captain who I think we should talk about her in a minute because I loved her as well.
Captain Angel.
Captain Angel. She was Cybok's lover, we find out at the end. And Cybok was the main villain of Star Trek 5, as you say.
Villain.
He was one of the best things about that. fairly bad movie. Actually,
Yeah.
I think he was an interesting villain that had potential. It was just the last act of that movie just kind of ruined a lot of the interesting build up that we had with him. But
it's canon. It's all fair game, and it was a really interesting Easter egg to drop. We'll see more of that.
Right.
Like Captain Angel was set up to be a recurring character. I'm sure we'll see her and probably Cybok next season.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I thought we would see him in the finale. I thought that's what we were building up to with him. But yeah, for sure, I think he'll be back at some point, and certainly she will, because they made a point of having her escape, didn't they? So,
yeah, I bet we'll see them both next season.
What I really liked about her is she was believable in both roles. She pulled the wool over their eyes, but she did it with a little bit of truth. She was talking to Spock about his human side and his Vulcan side, and how he didn't have to necessarily choose a side, but he had to kind of establish who he was and what it meant to be half human and half Vulcan, and that's kind of true. And that is Spock's arc across TOS and the motion pictures, in a sense. So it was really interesting to have her kind of, talk to him in that way. And then, of course, she says, I've known a few Vulcans. So so she's not telling the whole truth by any means, but that it was interesting, their dynamic. And then totally took me by surprise when she flipped like that. And I'm not often surprised by things like that.
I did not see it coming.
Not even a little bit.
I didn't either. I was fully fooled.
So very good performance. More trans representation in Star Trek as well, which Star Trek is absolutely leading the line on that, which is awesome. That actor.
Is that actor trans?
I think so. Yeah, I think
I didn't know. It doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't matter to me.
It doesn't matter to the story, except to say that Star Trek is doing wonderful things for trans representation with Discovery and now this show.
Gene Roddenberry would have, he wasn't a perfect person. Nobody was, but he dreamed of a future in which those type of things didn't matter, and I think we all approve and agree here.
Yeah, Star Trek is kind of like the best version of ourselves.
It is definitely a hopeful representation.
Representation, yeah. God knows.
That's reflected in Pike's speech in the pilot in the first episode, which was a great speech.
That speech. Did you guys get chills when he said that speech? It was so relevant to, basically anything in the newspaper or news venue. So
excuse me.
I watched one of the some of the Ready Room episodes, and there was one where Will Wheaton was interviewing Anson Mount, and it was that was one. He said they said that's one of the greatest speeches that, that's going to go down, and in Star Trek. And he said he had such, when he was reading the speech, he was having such an emotional. He was being overwhelmed with emotion because this was it really hit home for him because of everything. It was COVID was rampant. They'd had to film the pilot separately. The first half was filmed, and then they had to wait till the end of the season to film the second half of the pilot because something, with COVID. And then he said the George Ford and Floyd and everything, the marching, everything. He said it was just present in his mind when they were, doing the filming for this, and it really just struck him. It touched hard. He didn't even know that when he was reading for the role, he had no idea who this character was that he was reading for the role. They said it was Captain Parker, Okay, he's like
Mhm.
Parker. That's like a dumb
Okay.
generic. What the hell is this? That's basic, you know.
That was kind of
And
that was a code name, I guess.
Yeah.
yeah. So he didn't know he was reading for the role of Pike when he did his audition. And you can tell that he really just loves this show. He loves the character. And he's really he's a big Star Trek fan himself. So he was just so honored to fill this role in this, critical time.
Hmm.
So, yeah, if you get a chance to watch any of the Ready Room
I've seen
episodes,
several, not all of them, but I am going to agree with you. Like his portrayal is like he to me is the masculine ideal. This is what non-toxic masculinity looks like. It looks like Captain Pike.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Brave and strong and all of those qualities that define a man, but also sensitive and caring and discerning and not brash, like all of these qualities that make for a great leader and a great friend.
Yeah, he's
He's
not
like
closed off at all.
he's like
From
Aragorn in space, kind of.
Yeah, he is.
It's a good one. Good comparison.
Just a small correction, by the way. Jesse James Keitel, who played Captain Angel, non-binary, not trans.
Okay.
So made a mistake there, but yeah, I can't but agree with you there on Pike, and it's a more mature take on the character than what we saw in Menagerie and The Cage.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Excuse me while I put my hair up. It is literally 104 degrees, and my poor little air conditioner can't quite keep up. That's 40 C for all you Europeans and Canadians and whatever.
right.
Well, I'm glad they stuck the character of Captain Pike in a cask and let it age and mature and mellow for the last 40 years and bring him out in this lovely age, mature, wise,
And he's
elegant,
and
you
Star
know.
Trek has had its ups and downs, and it's been through its growing pains, and it's had ringing successes, and it's had times where it was not as successful. Let's just say, and it's really nice to see this story be so reflective of the best parts of the original series, as well as like some of the more long form storytelling that they've done with shows like Discovery. To me, they're hitting that perfect synergy that we want to have in our modern storytelling. At least from Trek, because one of my complaints about Discovery and Picard is like we're episode 1. Let's set up the big question mark and let's spend all season hammering away at this puzzle box of a story. Pull this lever, flip this switch, go through that door, and sometimes it just feels like next clue, next clue, next clue, and it can feel like a bit of a slog. I have not loved Picard.
No. Every season of both of those shows has had timing problems and tempo problems with the plot of the season arc, and every season of both of those shows has dragged at some point and not felt this ticking time bomb clock that we're supposed to care about. Just never quite kind of works because it's just.
But this show doesn't do that.
No, it doesn't have that formula, and
this show has an interesting premise at the beginning. They interact with it throughout the episode, and by the end of the episode, all the characters have changed a little bit. Maybe some of them have had bigger changes within the course of that episode. Like we see Pike go from being very questioning in the first. At the beginning of episode 1 to by the time we get to the end of the season, he has struggled with it a few times, and he's gone through this finale, which has really made him a believer that he kind of has to be there. And to the point where he consigns a young man to death by deleting his captain's log or his personal journal or whatever. He was going to write letter to Ma'at. I can't remember Ma'at's last name, but Al Hassan
began with an A for sure.
Yeah, but he had to choose to not do that
Yeah. And it was hard.
And it
Yeah.
was hard. And because it wasn't just him accepting his own future, it was him accepting that there were a couple of people that were still going to die anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Like he knows that he saves X number of these young ensigns in a terrible, terrible accident, but he still knows that he doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's guilt.
That would be haunting.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. And his
thank
reaction.
you, Kate, you are on it. You are on it today.
His reaction when he actually meets Mott, and it got me.
It was very sad.
Yeah, it was a shock, wasn't it? And he wasn't expecting
it. Yeah, he almost lost it, and
I was expecting something like that as a viewer, but it's seeing his shock when he saw that name.
Yeah, and to know that like the boy idolized him and the Enterprise and everything.
I would like to see Pike escape his fate somehow, but then I suppose in a way that's what he does do in Menagerie by returning to Talos and doing what he does in a way. So but knowing where he ends up, I don't know whether that kind of affects how we see this character. Remains to be seen, really, doesn't it? But I'm excited for the telling of the story.
Here's the thing. I don't want Pike to escape his fate. I think that canon is established for that character, and I don't want them to change it. It feels almost foundational to the story as a whole at this point. It's been referenced multiple times, and not just the Menagerie and the Cage, but like when J.J. Abrams made the new Star Trek movies, Pike was in there, and that was a fun representation of the character who wound up in a wheelchair in a different way, but parallel universe, so he's allowed to have a different life. But
this is Prime, isn't it? And it seems to want to stick to the framework, as you say.
I think his struggle to continue to find meaning in the face of his impending doom is going to be a fun existential journey for the character. Which is going to be fun for us as audience members to watch him navigate that, because let's face it, we all experience that as well. We're creatures aware of our own mortality, and occasionally that leads us to hard to answer questions, and that's what sci-fi is for, is to examine those questions.
What they're doing as well is they're establishing Spock's loyalty to him and his the justification for what happens in Menagerie, where Spock commandeers the Enterprise and basically kind of commits treason and puts his career and his life on the line in order to take them back to Talos like that.
For his friend.
They're kind of making that episode make sense in the telling of this relationship that they're establishing between them, and the sacrifices that Pike has to make specifically for Spock, actually, as we saw in the finale. We don't know how much of that Spock is going to be aware of in the future, because he didn't.
Well, I mean, they had that final conversation,
They had that conversation, but it was vague enough that
vague enough. Yeah. Well, you can't. Pike can't really say, because saying a thing will change a thing. But
that's right, yeah. But yeah, I really enjoy that relationship and how they're kind of working with the canon and the framework of the canon in order to build this arc with these two characters is really, really strong.
Part of me would love for Pike not to have to face that, but I think that character has already been sacrificed to the gods of canon,
But I'd like to get enough seasons where it actually leads right up to the accident, and and what a hell of a send off,
Yeah, How many years was it until the accident?
I heard today that it's 7 years
I think that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
before the accident, as of the end of season 1.
Yeah.
So
They could feasibly get a 7-year span in a series.
yeah, they could. And I also appreciate that while we did have the episodic storytelling, they're not trying to cram 22 episodes in there either. They
10 was great.
The 10 best ones, and they put a lot of time and effort into making every one of them cool and interesting, and they did.
Yeah.
Every episode was cool and interesting in its way. Some of them were more funny, some of them were more, dramatic, but I think they've kind of hit the sweet spot with this one.
Yeah, I didn't feel like we were lacking at the end of the 10 episodes. I felt like it was a very satisfactory season of worth of storytelling, and we had like a nice little, okay, here's a pinpoint right here from this to here. This is how far, Pike has gone in his journey this season.
Yeah, I could do with more episodes. I think 10 is a good number, but I think also if they increase that in season 2, I won't complain.
Right.
Because of the episodic style of it, I think they can do that. Whether or not they've got the budget for it is another question. But I don't think there's much danger of the tempo suffering for having more episodes in season 2. If they
right. I wouldn't say no. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say no, but some series I've watched with a limited number of seasons, it's your timing could be off, and
here's the thing:
as planned, right?
There's no fluff in this season. Everything rings true, even the freaking fantasy fairy tale episode. Like, it had its high fantasy, or it had its high science fiction idea running through it, as well as some really heartfelt familial type emotional beats running through it. Like, it was not fluff. I will take all the not fluff you've got. So 13 episodes, great, as long as none of them are filler episodes.
Yeah,
ain't nobody got time for that.
I mean, a Tribble episode would be kind of cute.
I would love that, like a good Tribble episode at least. Have you ever seen the short trek, the Trouble with, what's the name of that? Oh, have you seen any of the Trek short treks?
I've seen a few of them, but I don't think I've seen the Tribbles one.
Oh, Mom just yelled at me from the other room. It's Edward. The Trouble with Edward. Look that up. Get on Paramount Plus. Watch The Trouble with Edward. It's only like 10 or 12 minutes at most.
Yeah, I'll do that.
But yeah, it's hilarious, and it is a Tribble story.
I need to get a Tribble for my desk at some point, actually.
Yeah, I don't know why you don't have one.
I don't know either.
Okay, so we've been going for about an hour. So what do you say to a mid-roll?
It's your show, man.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Well, mid-roll it is then. Hi, everybody. This is a YouTube channel. So I'm going to say, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and ring that little notification bell, to be notified whenever we go live. But seriously, thanks for watching, everyone. We do this just for fun. It's not a huge audience, but we have a good time with our show, And if you want to have a good time hanging out with us during other times, you should join our Slack group. It's very similar to a Discord server, but it's just a different service. Anyway, if you would like to join that group, just send me an email to we3dragons@gmail.com and hang out with people like me and Nessie and Dan and Kate, who's in the chat, and Jaded Redhead, who I saw in the chat earlier, and Amy Blackfire, who I saw in the chat earlier, and Danny McKay, who I saw in the chat earlier. So yeah, just come hang out. It's a friend group more than a YouTube channel at this point. And but we've always got room for more. Just don't be an asshole.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only rule we have, right, Stephen?
Yep, that's it. And also thank you to our patrons who pay for our streaming software and our all that stuff that we end up using. Um, our Patreon High Council consists of. How did I miss? Okay, it's ridiculous. Ed Tollett, our Alpha patron, as well as Lord John Bronstein the Wise, who somehow did not make it into the credits this week. When I was copy pasting, I think I missed him. But we still love you, Bronstein. Whether or not your name made it in, I'll try to remember to put it in after the stream. But thank you to both Sean and Bronte, the two high counselors of our Patreon. And they are supported by the nobility of the realm, including the Cloaked One of the Underworld, Ryan Stavka, the Russian Quartermaster, Reflective Rambling, Arch-Maester Emma, Kate, Mistress of the House of Books, Jared Kozal, Doctor of Dragons, Lady Maura Lee of Starfall, and Lady Rita, the Unbound. Thank you, patrons. We love you guys. If you want to be a patron, there's a link down in the description. Also down in the description, you will find links to our Twitter. Dan, the links to your YouTube channel and your Twitter are also down in the description. You guys should go check out Dan's channel. It's pretty good. I think most of the people who are watching this live are probably already watching your stuff. But Dan, what's been going on over there at Voice of Geekdom?
So last week I released a video which was a short interview piece with my friend the Tolkien Professor, a well-known podcaster in the Tolkien fandom. Because one of the reasons I was there in America was to attend his conference, which was Myth Moot 9. And he had a big announcement there about a new publishing arm to their university. So we had a discussion about that. Currently, I am working on a video about Tom Bombadil in The Lord of the Rings. And just kind of exploring his... First of all, like the kind of metatextual history of how he came to be and the poem that Tolkien wrote in the 30s about him and how he ended up in The Lord of the Rings. And also just exploring his place in the actual mythology and legendarium and trying to take my stab at the question of who is he?
Right.
Because it's kind of he's kind of a mystery and an enigma.
Yeah. Can I just say, Dan, because you have a very specific speech pattern you use for your videos.
Right.
I cannot wait to hear that voice say ring a ding dillo or something like that. So I'm looking forward to it.
Hey doll, Mary doll. Ring a ding
my
dillo.
God. Tune in.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's going to be fun, actually.
So you're working on Tom Bombadil?
Tom Bombadil. Next week, I'll have a live stream on Friday evening as well, sort of early afternoon, actually, American time, reacting to the Rings of Power trailer, which will be out on Thursday. So I'll be looking at that. I'll have James Tauber on again, who I reacted to the first trailer with. He's actually one of the Signum faculty as well. So he teaches with the Tolkien professor for their school. And so I met him in person there in DC as well. So yeah, he's agreed to come on again, and potentially I'll have other guests. Maybe, I'm not sure yet. Also, I want to actually discuss the thing that we've been talking about behind the scenes as well.
We've been talking about. All right, cool. Maybe I'll get a little more information.
Sure. So I am working up towards some tabletop role-playing game content with the One Ring RPG second edition, which came out earlier this year. So I'm going to be running 5 starter set adventures and filming and recording them, hopefully sometime this month. In theory, I'm working on the recruitment for that at the moment. So I've been talking to Stephen, and Stephen has agreed to play. In theory, assuming that we can work out a schedule that works for everybody.
Yeah, because mine is probably the worst.
Because you play a lot of D&D, and you also have a day job.
Aren't the rest of you European?
One is there's
Oh,
one
okay.
other European. So there's a Norwegian who some people will know, who, if you watch my channel, will know her as the voice of Melian on my Silmarillion series, Nicolene. So she's an actress and a model and a cosplayer and everything else, and she does so much. Actually, she's on multiple podcasts and all sorts. So she's another very busy person.
I'm also a model and a cosplayer and an actor.
You
Funny.
certainly are a cosplayer, yeah. Chase Mullins as well, who does another voice. He was the voice of Myglian, and he's also an actor and a voice actor. So I'm very excited about those two coming on. I've reached out to one other person on Friday, and she has replied to me, and I'm hopeful that I'll have her as well. She's somebody else I met at Mythmove. And I don't want to say too much because she hasn't agreed yet. But hopefully, we'll have 4 players for this. The adventures themselves will be set in the Shire, about 20 years after the events of The Hobbit, and about 40 years before Bilbo's party at the beginning of The Lord of the Rings. And so, all of the adventures will be set in the Shire or on the borders of the Shire, and we'll have some fun. Hopefully.
I'm going to play the most. Oh man, you're going to be sick of me.
Surely not.
I'm going to role play the hell out of that Hobbit. Oh, that's all I can say. Like,
you've seen the pre-generated character sheets, haven't you?
Of a toque. Sorry, what?
I said you've seen the pre-generated character sheets, haven't you?
I have not seen. I have tried to become a little bit familiar with the system itself.
Right.
I've got a long way to go. But no, I have not looked at the pre-generated characters. But yeah,
okay.
Maybe I really should before I tell you what I'm going to play. Look at the pre-generated characters.
Well, I would like you to play Paladin Took, which is Peregrine Took's father. And so you can channel that Fool of a Took persona.
Okay.
And you maybe, if you can do it, maybe a little bit of a Scottish accent, like a Billy Boyd-esque accent. Hobbit accent would be nice. But
I can do a bad American approximation of a Scottish accent. So that's what I bring to the table. Or I could just give him a Texas accent and ruin your entire game from the beginning.
That could also be fun, though.
The Texan accent is strictly reserved for your dwarves, Dion. Come on.
Yeah, you're right. I have a D&D dwarf that has a very thick Texas accent. It's fun.
But it could be Texas related.
Anyway,
yeah.
Dan, I'm super looking forward to that.
Yeah.
D&D is my escape. This is not D&D, but it's related. But it's fun. It's fun.
It's a different type of system. It's like kind of quite episodic. So we'll kind of play an adventure at a time, and it will feel like an episode of a TV show in theory. And there'll be a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hour adventures each. It's a different system, but I'll explain the dice rolls as we go through. It's quite a simple system.
Look, I'm good at pretending, so that's what you're getting when you get me as a player,
Yeah, so I'm excited for that. Hopefully we'll get that out in the next month or 2.
I'm glad to see John just got back home from vacation himself.
Yeah.
John, really glad you made it home safe, buddy. What are we doing next week?
You didn't know what we were doing this week until
you're right.
Yesterday.
The thing is, there are things I want to talk about. Like, one of the things that's very high on my list to talk about right now is Miss Marvel. I've pretty well enjoyed that show, but my current obsession is with a movie I watched 3 days ago and will not shut up about now, which is the film Everything Everywhere All at Once. If you have not seen that movie, go see that movie as soon as you possibly can, as soon as it's feasible. It's in theaters. It's also on some different streaming services. Watch that movie, because we will be talking about it on this channel as soon as I can get both John and Nessie to watch it. But Nessie, you're not here next week. John doesn't want to talk about Miss Marvel, so I don't know what we're going to do.
Flip a coin.
Flip a coin for what, though? Heads what, tails what?
I'm fairly certain you can find other people to talk about Miss Marvel with if you wanted to.
I'm sure I can, but
but
John's been gone for a few weeks, and
he has.
you know,
you should
He
probably have him back
misses his
on.
boyfriend. He
Yeah,
really
I
just misses
I miss
his
my internet
husband. You know. So, yeah, I'm sure he's missed you too, Stephen.
Well, I hope so.
I'm sad that I didn't get a chance because of COVID. I didn't get a chance to give John a bloody good hug because
Yeah.
John turned up a little later and we already knew about the COVID by the time he'd gotten there. So we were a little bit more careful with John than we were with one another.
Yeah, and we supplied him with a steady stream of orange juice, which once again triumphed over the bug.
Yep. But anyway, we often don't plan that far ahead, and like this week, Dan was like, "Hey, I want to talk about Strange New Worlds," and I'm like, "You know what? That's what we're gonna do."
Mm-hmm.
So occasionally, that's just how we do things here: is that we leave it to the last minute and something inspired happens.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
but we also take direction. So if there's anything out there that you guys are interested in, you know how to get in touch with us.
Yeah, if there is something that you would really like us to cover, by all means. A couple weeks ago, it was Potter saying, "Hey, I would love to see a thing about why we love sci-fi and fantasy." So we did that, and then Dan was like, "Hey, want to talk about Star Trek?" We talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you're right, Kelly. No one's talking about last minute with you.
Yeah. Well, by the way, you're coming on next week. I'm not sure what the topic's going to be.
But yeah, so we'll have something next week. It'll be nerdy.
A lot of people are talking about The Boys at the moment. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I haven't watched The Boys. I don't know if I can binge it in a week. And
I haven't seen it either. So
it's like I've seen the first 2 seasons, but it's a lot that it's depressing and gruesome, and I just haven't.
Is there going to be a ton of stuff that you can't talk about on YouTube as well? Or maybe
not.
Maybe
There's probably a little bit of stuff, but I just. You have to be in a headspace to deal with the sort of like really dark and gruesome nature of that show. And I just haven't been for the last month,
Understandable.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for the mid-roll? I can't really think of anything. We talked about Dan and what he do. We got the Patreon shout-outs. I plugged the Slack group.
Yeah.
That's about it.
One more time, make sure you press like.
Oh, yeah, hit like and subscribe.
But yeah.
It's like this. Yeah, okay, so
let's talk about
John has been you don't need to use that kind of language with me.
What?
I'm sure there's a show called Bastard, but like, what? Been watching Bastard? I'm just like, jeez, John.
Oh, jeez.
Calm down.
Get some OJ in you.
Yeah, I know. Drink some orange juice and chillax, bro. Okay, let's get back to Star Trek. We got a good 45 minutes left. Bring up anything and everything. We've just been meandering and talking about what we love.
Dr.
Mabenga.
Yeah, Dr. Mabenga and his daughter. We kind of touched just a little bit to it, but that's one of the big underlying arcs for the whole season. It touches on during so many episodes. And we do kind of see a resolution for that.
And that's also a legacy character. Also.
Yeah, where did we see him before? I don't remember where I've seen him before, but I knew there was a legacy character. But is he a character that shows up in the cartoon or something? Because he's not in the cage. There's a different Doctor in the cage and in Menagerie.
Okay. He says he's from the original show. Yeah, he is. Enterprise's second Doctor. First appearance in Star Trek was in A Private Little War. In that episode, Mbenga is one of the doctors working on the medical team under Dr. McCoy.
Right, okay. Yeah, I don't remember that episode.
And Mbenga appears in only one more episode, a third season standalone entitled That Which Survives. In this episode, he performs an autopsy on a dead away team member. Yep.
Okay.
So he's chief
well, I'm
medical
glad
officer.
He's got quite an arc in this show.
Here's the thing. He's chief medical officer, but at some point in the future, he will be under a different chief medical officer. I wonder if he gets demoted somewhere, because that would be an interesting storyline.
Yeah, maybe he's going to commit some sort of ethical transgression in the future, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he knew about the Illyrian thing with you know, he knew about that, and that kind of helped her cover. I mean, he could be, you know, that could be part of it, because, you know, she does end up, you know, getting taken in.
Yeah, the writers have said that they've already got the resolution for that storyline in season 2 planned. I don't know if they might have even filmed it already.
You know, he may even just step away for a bit, you know, to kind of get in the right headspace or something. He just might have to step away from Starfleet for a bit, or go on another, you know, like a humanitarian mission on his own.
Again, there's a lot that they can do.
It's wide open.
There are some sort of like, they can't kill Spock, they can't kill Nurse Chapel, they can't kill Dr. Mbenga.
They can't kill Uhura.
They can't kill Sam Kirk.
Because he has to die off screen.
He has to die later, right.
Can that mustache?
Oh, I love it. Oh, it's so good. The creepy mustache.
Pike even comments on it at some point, doesn't he? He says, you know, I'm starting to like that mustache.
Yeah.
At one point.
Have you seen the memes about Captain Pike's hair?
Oh, I love his hair. Don't touch it.
Yeah,
the character
the Johnny Bravo memes. Yeah.
But it's just. But anything else, they can just kind of be wide open, and I love that about Star Trek in general, is that it's just the right amount of advancement from where we are today, that really anything is possible, but they still look like humans that we, you know, their society still looks like one we recognize. It's not something 5,000 years in the future that has no real connection to the world we live in today. They're not that different yet. Especially like as a species, you know, we evolved to be persistence hunters in the Serengeti, and our technology has advanced way faster than our physiology has.
Yeah, but the opening scene on this series has him, Captain Pike, riding across the freaking snow like a cowboy, you know, and kind of like, you know, in touch on Earth, in touch with nature. You know, that could be Montana today, you know, or not today. It's too hot today, but you know, that could be on right now.
All right, I got to Google what's the weather in Montana right now. I'm kidding. Yeah, it's hot everywhere.
It's hot.
It's 104 here, which is 40 feet. But yeah, and it does that thing that good sci-fi does, is that it looks at who we are through the lens of who maybe we want to be or who we fear we will become. Yeah. And that's something Star Trek has always done really well. I think a lot of this season had these elements of like looking at people, and part of human nature is to otherize, to be like, this is my group and that's that group, and my group is important but that group isn't. There's a lot of divisiveness in our world right now, in American culture, in the world in general, and Star Trek, it reflects the American conscious more than any other nationality, like more than it would say a German or your British or Russian or Chinese, because it's an American show. But this sort of like desire to overcome our differences, to share our burdens, it's as relevant today as it was in the 60s when Star Trek first started doing it. It looks a little different in the modern world than it did back then. We've moved away from there's a Russian on the bridge to there is a non-binary love interest on the bridge. Or, yeah, they don't. If you remember back in the original pilot, Captain Pike talks about not being used to there being women on the bridge when he's talking about Una as his first officer.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God that is something that is not a part of this show at all. Like to the point that, well, if you take away Pike and Spock, it's all women. And I'm like, you mean if you take away the first in command, straight white hetero white dude, and the second in charge, hetero white dude, then you get women? Well, okay, I guess Spock's not in second.
No, he's science officer.
But like, there are two male characters right there. Dr. M'Benga, important character. Sam Kirk has his moments to shine. The transporter chief, the Asian guy that runs the transporters, we see him several times. Can't remember his name, but I heard some people, soldiers in the culture war, complaining about how many women were on the bridge, and I'm like, it's basically 50-50, y'all.
It is, yeah.
I haven't heard that. The one that I have heard is people were upset that the Admiral, who appeared in the animated series in, like, I think it was in the 70s, was a white guy who was voiced by Jimmy Doohan, who played Scotty, as was like half of the characters in the animated show. He did loads of voices for it. And he's in this show as a black man playing him. Don't know the name of the actor, but that was a manufactured controversy that came up on my Twitter feed, and that was just like, oh my goodness, it's a cartoon.
This is the weather in Montana, by the way.
Oh man,
that's nice. I would rather be there than here.
Wow.
It's been very hot here in England since I've been back, actually. I've been sweating in my office here, and we don't have proper air conditioning.
Right.
We don't do that here, in the words of Black Panther.
We normally don't need it.
No.
But yeah, so what other characters? We haven't talked much about La'an or Erica or Una. We've touched on them all a little bit, but
I think we should also talk about the Gorn at some point as well.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Should we just move into the Gorn and by extension
La'an? I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, she gets an episode early on where we see a lot of stuff from her point of view, and I think she's one of the most utilized characters that we get a story arc with in this season. I enjoy her acting. She looks a lot like Drummer as well, doesn't she?
She does, and you
you
noticed it, and so did a lot of
the first thing I thought. I mean, she looks like the actress looks different, but the look that they've gone for is very Drummer
braided
inspired.
hair, the kind of almost
Smoky
her
eyes.
eye makeup is not as exaggerated as Drummer's, but she's got some pretty significant eye makeup.
Yeah, and she's a security officer, so
Mhm.
she can kick some serious butt.
Yeah, a little bit damaged. We see her in the very first episode. She doesn't want to be anesthetized when they're doing the genetic thing to her. And so she's a little bit damaged, and she has some work to do on herself a little bit. And we also see her clash with Una, but also have this really
that very idea,
over the genetic manipulation that's part of her story arc. But they also have this lovely bond and this like great friendship as well that we see.
I love later on when they're doing like checking things off the ensign list or
ensign bingo, Enterprise bingo.
That bingo, Enterprise bingo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a brilliant like subplot that was.
I love that.
It didn't feel like filler, but it was. But it didn't, because it was so entertaining. It's just. But yeah, a really strong acting performance actually from the actress that played La'an. And the first thing I thought was the Noonien Singh surname. I thought we were going to get more from that than we did, but it just kind of established her biases about eugenics and genetic manipulation, and so that set up the conflict that we saw later on. But what they rather focused on was her traumatic experience with the Gorn and how she'd been rescued and she'd lost her brother and all of that. And so that introduced that storyline. And then, of course, we meet the Gorn. We get two Gorn episodes. We get one where we don't see the Gorn and one where the Gorn... They've kind of retconned the Gorn a bit, because the Gorn that I remember from Arena, from TOS, classic episode, it was a slow, super strong, lumbering kind of beast who was nearly indestructible, who Kirk managed to take out with a makeshift MacGyvered cannon that he'd made with some makeshift gunpowder. And so what we get in the second episode, I think it was episode 8 or 9. I don't remember. It was one of the later episodes.
9. It was 9.
9. Yeah, I think it was 9.
It was reminiscent of Aliens.
Yeah, I was going to say they were like xenomorphs, basically.
Yes.
So there was a little bit of a retcon there. Not sure whether I loved the retcon, but they were very young Gorn, so maybe that was
Well, they La'an explained how they would metamorphosize as they, killed.
Even there, I feel like there's this big change, even from what we actually saw in the original series. Like, it's fine to have a boogeyman type character. I wish it wasn't the Gorn. Because my impression of the Gorn is that, well, they're not Federation members. After the events of the Arena, they came to an understanding of each other and an understanding with the Federation, where there is some supplemental material that suggests that the Gorn were allied to the Federation at some point after Arena.
I wasn't aware of that, because I don't know that we see them. We don't see them in 90s Trek ever, that I can remember.
I think maybe it's the animated series.
Maybe, yeah.
But like the animated series is only, it's like beta canon.
I would consider it so.
It's not alpha canon. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the same goes for the new animated shows that are coming out now as well, which one of them is very, very silly comedy. It's like sub Rick and Morty style comedy in Lower Decks, which I wouldn't consider that canon. I wouldn't consider the 70s campy cartoon canon
like
either.
Beta canon. Like, the stories happen, but like they're a tongue-in-cheek look at.
Yeah. So yeah, the retcon with the Gorn, it very much changed my impression of who the Gorn were, just based on the one Gorn captain that we see in Arena.
Right.
And feels like they could have maybe invented their own alien instead of using the Gorn to me. But But I very much enjoyed the first episode that they did with the Gorn.
The one where La'an is having her memories and
Yeah.
when they find a little girl.
Yeah.
Or no, that's the second
that's
one
the
is where they
second
find
one.
a little girl. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they're playing hide and seek with a Gorn ship, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that was clever how they got out of that. The black hole and the slingshotting and playing dead.
Yeah.
And how they dropped the torpedo on the one Gorn ship, and then the Gorn swooped in because they were just waiting for that, and more ships came. I like the strategic space battle element of Star Trek quite a bit. So,
Me too. Have you ever heard of a game called Starfleet Battles?
Yes, I have heard of it. I've only heard of it from watching Star Trek content on YouTube, actually. But yeah,
I have that game. I have a lot of stuff for that game. It is tactical spaceship combat. For those of you out there who don't know what I'm talking about, you'd hate it. No sane person likes this game. It's basically like filling out a tax form every turn, and then splitting hairs for for an hour and a half to do one turn, and then you fill out a tax form again. It's exceedingly complicated. It
sounds brutal.
It is brutal, but the rule book reads like a technical manual for a starship. It's nuts, but I know a couple of people that enjoy it, and if Potter and I ever end up in the same place, we're playing that game because he plays it too. But yeah,
of course he does.
Yeah, exactly. Kate, like
something he would play.
Yeah, that
it
sounds
might
like
be the most complicated board game ever made. I think it's in the Guinness Book of World Records, literally as the most complicated board game ever made. But it is a Star Trek spaceship combat game.
You have little ship models in that game as well, don't you?
No, they're little cardboard squares because they have to fit on the tiny little hexagon map.
Wow.
You can do miniatures if you want.
That does sound dreadful, to be honest.
I'm telling you, nobody in their right mind would play this game. I love it. But
well, there you go.
I am not in my right mind, clearly.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'll show you.
Oh.
So the rule books don't come in a nice hardback. They come in sort of like soft cover. This is my rule book for that game. And
delightful.
Yeah. Like there's not a bunch of artwork and pictures like, okay, a little picture. But it's just, let's see, I open to rule G16 stasis field generators. Rule FD 5.3 launch guided drones. Seeking weapons, combat rules.
You've got a couple of people in the chat watching who I happen to know enjoy a binder with tabs and color-coded tabs. So you might actually accidentally be recommending something to people.
Yeah, I've got my tabs on here too. Anyway, this is not really Star Trek, but the Gorn are in there. Romulans are in there. Federation, Klingons. Anyway.
Well, if you and Powder get together and I happen to be there too, I will play that with you because I will.
Yeah, you'll hate it, but it's okay.
I know.
You'll enjoy the company.
But I will humor you anyway.
Right.
Bunch of masochists.
Anyway, what else should we talk about? Again, loved La'an, loved Una this season too. And the thing is, like, I haven't seen Rebecca Romaine for a while. I'm sure she's been working. She's just not been in anything that I've seen for a while. But she was so good in this. That character is so much fun, and she does have that. She's not a big lady, but she's tall. She's got broad enough shoulders that she can cut a kind of intimidating presence physically.
No, definitely.
Which is a fun aspect of that character. Not that it's anything that she relies on. It just is part of who she is.
Just for the benefit of people who might have watched the show but have been going, where do I know her from? She was Mystique before Jennifer Lawrence took over. So that's probably the other role that she's best known for.
And she was married to John Stamos at the time.
But yeah, presence was the same one I was thinking of the whole time she was on screen.
Yes, well, she's very statuesque. She's got that statuesque presence.
Yeah.
She does.
She's just there, you know.
She's 5'11".
Yeah.
So yeah.
She has a nice physical presence, and
does.
She and Lon have almost like that buddy dynamic.
Yeah, but like they're so straight-laced and like hard-nosed, both of them, that watching them have that buddy cop moment or buddy cop sort of subplot,
bad cop and bad cop,
was just hilarious. I don't know, it just seemed so funny because it goes against what they've established, but it was still believable.
In the original pilot to TOS, she was also played by Majel Barrett, who also played Nurse Chapel as well.
Right.
Wow.
So it's interesting to have both of those characters be main cast members and be played by very different actors. Actually, again.
Okay.
Well, then we have Erica Ortegas, our pilot extraordinaire.
She might be my favorite character that's not a legacy character. Sort of like my favorite new introduction. She was so much fun. I loved her attitude. Like, she took her job seriously, but she when she clocked out, the hair, she let her hair down. She had friends. She liked practical jokes and good sense of humor. Great. Loved the character. She didn't really have an arc this season very much. I imagine she will have more later, but like when you give an arc to Pike and Spock and Chapel and La'an and Una, like something's got to give. And
they still gave her nice moments of characterization. Like I certainly knew her name. The one thing that always annoyed me about Discovery, especially the first season, is that we kept seeing these characters on the bridge, but we had no idea who any of them were. I had no idea what their names were or anything about them. They were just recurring.
That's always been my complaint about Discovery. Like every season since the first season, they've come back and I've been like, please give me more Detmer. Dear God, give me more Owoshikun and Detmer. And they don't really do it.
Well, gradually they gave us more from those characters. A little bit, but not a whole lot. And there's still a whole bunch of other characters that we've never explored in Discovery who they're still there like every week, but they get one line if they're very lucky. And we never find out anything about them. But Ortegas, we certainly have a sense of who she is, and there's potential there. And I'm excited to see more from her.
I think she gets plenty of characterization. I just don't think she has much of an arc this season. She doesn't really have story centered on her emotional or psychological growth or whatever, She didn't have that this season, which is fine because she didn't change. She didn't have an arc to change through, but she was great and interesting character the whole time she was there.
She gets a command at one point as well. She's in the captain's chair at one point. So she has moments, but I
really enjoyed her. She got a cool haircut too.
Yeah,
she got the 23rd century side cutter.
Yeah, she's got a lot of attitude. Just
Okay. Spock. Of all the characters in this show, those were the biggest shoes they had to fill. And okay, we saw him play in Discovery, but that really this version of Spock he was playing in season 2 of Discovery is very different to the Spock even that we get in this show. And certainly different to the Spock that we get in the original series. But it feels like a nice stepping stone between those two versions of that character. Like what we saw in Discovery, he's recovered from that. He's back on duty. We see him this season. He is not the Spock that Leonard Nimoy portrayed in the 60s, but you can see him becoming that person.
Yeah.
And I thought the actor who did it, who played the part, whose name is Ethan Peck, is great in the role. Like, Spock is such an icon of science fiction storytelling at this point. Anybody says the Spock has become synonymous with repressing your emotions or being hyperlogical, and the character is kind of coded as autistic. Maybe less so this version than Nimoy's version, but it's still there. And
all those emotions are definitely there.
Yeah, he lets them out a couple of times, doesn't he?
Yeah. But I just really enjoyed Ethan Peck. His even the sort of speech patterns that Nimoy had. He's doing a really great job of not mimicking them, but feeling like it's the same person speaking.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not sure I stated that the clearest way, but you guys understand what I'm saying.
He's Gregory Peck's grandson as well, by the way.
Is he?
Yeah, I didn't know that, and then all of a sudden I heard that somewhere, and I was like, of course he is. Like, why did I not realize that?
Well, he does a great job.
Yeah,
I think he brings a new life to this. Like you said, there's just a mighty big shoes to fill.
Yeah,
the most beloved character in all of Star Trek. You have to have kid gloves, and he's just filling. He's doing a magnificent job.
he's not quite doing a Leonard Nimoy impression. He's doing his own take on the character.
Not at all. He's wearing it as his own skin.
He doesn't have Nimoy's gravelly voice that he has quite, and he shouldn't try to imitate that. I think it would strain the role too much. The way he's portraying it. What he does do quite well is the logical flat tone of voice, and he's got the eyebrow down.
Oh yeah.
The moment in one of my favorite moments in this entire season was the moment in the finale, which of course was as I said, was the Balance of Terror reimagining, alternate history timeline, Balance of Terror episode, and when we see the Romulans for the first time, which there's an exact parallel moment in the Balance of Terror episode, and they do the same like camera pan to Spock and the same eyebrow moment, and then the Balance of Terror theme starts playing as well. They use the same music as well, and I just love that moment. It's like it really hit my Trek nostalgia buttons, but also Ethan Peck just nailed that look. I love that they reused the music as well, because the music of that episode is great. It's a classic. Filling in for John talking about music. Sorry, rambling.
Okay, no, but Dan, by all means, fill up time. Again, you are the Trek guy in this. Like, I enjoy it. I am not the super fan that some people are. I can only speak to what I see and sort of like my engagement with it. I don't know that I have much else to say other than, you know what? We've got about 15 minutes. Let's talk about what we want to see in season 2.
Makes sense, yeah.
So think about that. One thing I want to see in season 2 is an Erica arc. You know,
yeah, it's her turn.
And I would also like to see Nurse Chapel get a little bit more happiness in her life. You know, not to have sort of like you know, I'm happy for her to be happy, but she clearly, and while she appears to be fairly happy living the kind of carefree single lifestyle that she does, I feel like we do see in the way that she looks and engages with Spock that she would be receptive to something more serious. And to see that the backdrop of that against the way that science fiction is able to sort of tell a story that has deeper meaning than just a love story, for her to not be I really love that she's not defined by it, but like it's something that maybe she has a longing for. I would love to see that. Basically what I'm saying is, please cast me as her love interest. So yeah.
Well, I would not like to see that, but I mean, I can see why you would. No,
You don't want me to be cast as the love interest?
As Nurse Chapel.
You don't want her to have a love interest at all?
Well, we know that the thing is, we know that she has to end up pining for Spock in TOS anyway.
It doesn't mean she can't have something that happens and then falls apart.
I don't want to see that. I don't want to do that to you either. But the thing that we do have to see fall apart is Spock's relationship with T'Pring as well, because you mentioned in Mock Time earlier on in the first hour. What happens in that episode is we meet T'Pring, and T'Pring has got another fella. She's got a guy, and she wants to be with, I can't remember the guy's name, but there's another Vulcan character, and so there's this fight to the death that happens in that episode, with she nominates Kirk as her champion to fight Spock, who's deranged and is suffering from the Ponfar, the 7-year reproductive cycle.
Yeah,
and she sets up that whole thing so that she will be free of Spock because she doesn't want to marry Spock. So we have to see that relationship kind of fall apart over the course of this. We're already seeing the cracks and the conflict. And so Danny McKay's saying Brock. I'm not sure if that sounds right or not, but that's a Pokemon gym leader. But Danny would know. It's something like that. It's a 1-syllable name like that. Murder Horny. Yeah, that's basically that's right.
That's Ponfar for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that relationship is going to suffer, and it's going to be interesting to see, I think. So I want to see that. I want to see more Cyborg, because I want to see him find God, for want of a better description, to set up his, final frontier arc that we see in the movie. We need to probably have a prequel moment with that. Hopefully kind of rehabilitate that character a little bit so that whole plot makes more sense. It would be nice somehow. That's probably a tall order because that movie is awful, as we've said. So those are things I'd like to see. Obviously, we need to resolve the Una plot as well, with her being arrested. And I think we'll see Pike really go to bat for her, probably. So that would be fun to see. And just, maybe more prequel moments, more TOS stuff, something that's set up more. more stuff with Kirk's crew, and more subtle references that work for me as a Trek fanatic would be nice. But in keeping with the same philosophy of not upsetting the pot for new viewers either.
So, Nessie,
Hmm.
do you want to see Nurse Chapel get a boyfriend or not?
Nurse Chapel is she's very complicated. Yeah, I would like to see her have something for herself. You know, whether it be a relationship or maybe something that is just uniquely hers. You know, that would be good. As of right, I mean, right now she's just in and out of other people's plot lines. So, you know, having her have something for herself would make a big difference with her character. Um, I'd also really like to see Uhura stop waffling, whether you know, get with the she has to make her commitment, and I'd like to see, was Hemmer the turning point? Is she now going to be all in, or is just seeing the loss of someone else that she holds really very dear, going to, just like, oh, it's not worth it, but we know she stays, so just seeing her finally reach that decision would be great. And yeah, I'd like to see what's next with the whole, Days of Our Lives on Vulcan, and see how that soap opera plays out.
Yeah.
Who thought that the Vulcans would be the one to get the soap opera angle? So
it's not surprising, really. Actually, I mean, overall,
it is kind of a flip on the thing. Just to okay, Vulcans have their society doesn't show emotion. Let's give them a love story,
Yeah,
Let's
I mean,
do a whole
guess
soap opera about this.
as soon as I ask for it, like I kind of get it. Like, oh, let's give the woman a love story. I only feel that way about Nurse Chapel because it seemed like something that would be an outgrowth of what her story already is. And she had plenty to do this season that passed the Bechdel test. Let's just have that said too. And I'm not trying to get dates for La'an and Erica and Una, but I think I would like to see that for her character because she seems a little bit unfulfilled romantically,
Danny makes up a good point. I hope we see more of Hemmer somehow. Yeah, I agree. I'd like to see him come back in some sense. Maybe we meet his family, or maybe we have a kind of
or
a flashback or a time travel storyline where we see an alternate version of him, or a mirror universe version or something.
It's Star Trek. There's 100 ways.
Yeah, there's a bunch of ways. I kind of hope that we see Scotty as well, and maybe see, because I think canonically Scotty and Uhura end up having a relationship. So maybe we see the beginnings of that take shape. I was actually watching Star Trek V earlier. I didn't watch the whole movie, but I watched some of it just to refresh my memory about Cyborg. And they kind of have this flirtation at the beginning of that movie.
So you didn't? Does it still suck?
It's still, yeah. Well, actually, there's some really nice character moments at the beginning of that movie.
It's not all bad. I agree.
I didn't get to the end of the movie. The direction's pretty.
It's just
mediocre,
mostly
but
bad.
Yeah, I didn't get to the end of the movie.
Mostly bad, still slightly good. All bad. There's only one thing you can do: go through its pockets and look for loose change. But
check for magic items.
Yep. Well, final thoughts here in the last few minutes, y'all.
Well, I can't wait for season 2 to come out.
It's going to be a while.
Yeah, it'll be a while.
Yeah, there's a billion different Trek shows coming out right now. So we've got, I think, probably season 5 of Discovery at some point. We've just had Picard, so it'll be a while before we get season 3. But I think they have filmed season 3 already. So good shows. At some point, we're getting this. What's it called? Section 31 show coming out, which is we saw Section 31 in Discovery, so it'll be kind of
intriguing.
Another spin-off of Discovery, which could have some potential to overlap with this show a bit because it's going to be set in the same time period again.
Hopefully, they'll keep the same actor.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully we'll enjoy that, and it's great to have so much Star Trek to talk about, even though not all of it is great, and this show really is good.
It really is.
It really is good.
Right from the first episode, I was like, "This is what I've been waiting for," because Anson Mount as Pike has his speech at the end of that episode. And like you said, I think, Nessie, you said, I got chills the first time watching that because it was a proper Trek captain speech. And I knew it was going to be episodic Trek as well, which was kind of like putting on comfortable clothing again for Trek. It was like it was back in its comfort zone. That's not to say that they can't do good season-long arcs. But it was so nice to just have a real Star Trek feel again.
To feel like you're exploring the galaxy.
Yeah, and have something different each week. It just creates that feeling in the viewers because we don't know what we're going to see next week. At the end of a Discovery episode, I kind of know what's going to happen next week. Like, I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I kind of know what to expect. I have no idea what's coming up next in this show.
Yeah. And allegedly, we're going to see parts of the Enterprise that we haven't seen before. Yeah.
We're going to see the big circular swimming pool that the dolphins live in.
Maybe. Who knows? Submit it.
Or no, that's not this Enterprise. That's not the Enterprise D, or isn't it?
Yeah, there was a technical diagram where they had that on the Enterprise D. You're right. Yeah, I know what you're referencing now. Yeah.
All right. Well, again, so the three of us, we are different levels of Star Trek fans. I am not one that's like, new Star Trek, yes, I gotta watch this. I have been watching them. It's not a big secret that I did not love Picard this season. I have enjoyed Discovery well enough, but I haven't really loved it since season 2.
And now you know why.
The show, it just worked. It was the right blend of episodic and serialized, serious and silly. Sometimes the original series has this campiness to it, and this show had that. Not as much as the 60s version did, but just the right amount, I think, to appeal to the modern audience. It was silly when it needed to be. It was serious when it needed to be. It took the characters very seriously. It took, even when they were being, versions of themselves from a storybook fairy tale, the actors committed and delivered those characters. And did we get a Song of Ice and Fire reference in that? Because the name of her sword was, oh God, Danny. Me and Danny McCabe were talking about this the other day. Her sword, yeah, Danny. What was the name of her sword? Tell me, because I feel like it might be a Song of Ice and Fire reference.
Wasn't Widow's Wail, was it?
No, it wasn't a direct sword name. There it is, Starfall. Maybe, the Danes of Starfall have a really super famous sword. It could be. but yeah, I just it was great. It's a great show overall. Star Trek is not the franchise that is ever going to get me super excited. It's just it's not. But like I can always enjoy good storytelling, and this was done really, really, really well. Best Star Trek I've seen in a long time.
The franchise might not get you excited, but was this not better than recent Star Wars shows? I think it was.
Yeah,
personally.
Yeah,
like quality-wise, it was better.
Yeah, I think Star Wars has fallen into the trap of just trying to give us fan service.
Yeah, but I got the right amount of fan service from this show.
Yeah, from this one.
I was going to say, there's a lot of fan service in this show. You can't compare it there. But the Enterprise looks very slick.
It does, and it looks just enough like the '60s version, but modern enough. Yeah, it's really good.
It's very slick.
Design is really good. Yeah, good stuff. All right, that's the end, y'all. I'm done. Unless Dan or Nessie, you have something else very specific that you want to bring up?
I'm done.
Nope, I'm
okay,
done.
Well, great. So, Dan, you've got a live stream next Friday?
Yeah, Friday this Friday coming.
Friday the 5 days from now?
Yeah, that one.
Which will be the 15th.
That one.
yeah. So the new trailer for the Rings of Power show is out on the 14th, on the Thursday. So I'm going to be doing a reaction stream to it the next day.
And when can we expect you to say "ring-a-ding-dillo" in your very posh accent?
I don't have that posh of an accent, but
you put it on for your videos, man. Come on.
Probably next week at some point. I'm nearly finished writing it, so I'll probably record tomorrow evening, and it's not going to be a very, very long video, so probably that'll come out towards the end of the week as well, next week.
Well, I would ask you what you think Tom Bombadil is right now, but if we do that, people won't watch your video, so...
Yeah, I have some original ideas that hopefully other YouTubers and so on haven't talked about before. And as always, I'll stick quite close to the text, and I'll have lots of quotations lined up and do my academic type thing that I do.
Nice.
And go through it line by line and have a think about what he's all about and why is he so weird and and why is he always singing about his clothing.
Yeah, Wizzy does bring up a good point. It did not have my mind blown by a glimpse of Star Trek. I mean, I was always a Star Wars kid, the hero's journey, fantasy storytelling. Yeah, but like I recognize the cultural icon that Trek is, and I really enjoyed the show.
Yeah.
Do you have anything coming up other than what we do over
here? We're going to talk about dragons sometime soon.
We are going to talk about dragons at some point. Fizzband's Treasury of Dragons. There's a lot of new cool D&D dragon lore in it, which will be something fun.
How to incorporate more dragons into your D&D game.
Mm-hmm. Fun fact, my D&D crew fought a dragon today.
Yeah. You've incorporated quite a bit of dragons and draconic lore into your game, Steven.
Yep.
Good job.
Yeah, dragons figure very highly in the sort of behind the scenes stuff, and finished a D&D campaign today where they defeated a dragon. A couple of characters went down. One character went down twice and ended the fight with 1 hit point. Anyway, I digress. It was a good time. Dan, can't wait to get recording on those the One Ring.
The One Ring RPG, the second edition.
Game.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll get to that soon. I'm still organizing, but as you can imagine, like organizing just a D&D game is tough enough, let alone a podcast with...
You have my sword and my axe. Or what is it? You have my sword and my bow. The fifth isn't good for me.
Yeah.
Such a good meme.
Yeah,
it's so true.
So true.
It is.
So yeah, that's coming at some point, but We'll get there.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to have like a couple of guest people as well. That
That'd be cool.
I'm not going to tell you who they're going to be.
I need to read up on Paladin Took, though. Apparently,
we don't know that much about him, so it's.
but
really
his name is Paladin. Do I get to do Divine Smite?
You do not know.
Okay, darn. I'll live with it.
He's not a paladin in that sense, but
right.
He's a Took, so he's the future Thane of the Shire. So he's kind of like the heir to the the Thanehood, basically. You know what a Thane is? It's a leader, civil leader kind of thing. And he's Pippin's dad, so you can imagine what he's like.
Yeah. I'm not. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I have no idea what it's going to look like once it's done, but I'm here to try. Y'all, I think we're going to cut it off here, though. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. It is always a genuine pleasure.
Likewise, my friend. Thanks for having me.
Nessie, it's nice to have you back from vacation. I'm glad you had a good time.
Yeah, missed you guys.
Should be back next week for whatever the hell it is we're talking about. We haven't made up our minds yet. We'll figure it out. I'll let you know. To everybody here that was watching live, thank you very much. Oh, excuse me. I guess I got bored.
Well, then we better just sign off.
If you're watching this later, also thank you. But we love the people who are here live for the chat because it's fun. It adds a lot to the overall experience. So consider joining us live next time. It's the same time, 6 p.m. Eastern time every week, every Sunday. And it's just nerd friends hanging out. If you've got an idea for something to talk about, let me know. But ultimately, the deciding factor is, does Steven want to talk about this? 99% of the time. That's just the deciding factor, you know? And I did want to talk about this show, this Star Trek show, because
I've been wanting to talk about it for a while.
For someone who is not a huge Star Trek fan, to have been as engaged by this as I was is a big thumbs up.
Yep. Same. Ditto.
All right, y'all. So we'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, you know what it is. Peace.
Peace.
And be excellent to each